Welcome to Bible Fiber, where we are encountering the textures and shades of the biblical tapestry through 12 minor prophets, 2 reformers, and 1 exile. I am Shelley Neese, president of the Jerusalem Connection, a Christian organization devoted to sharing the story of the people of Israel, both ancient and modern. I'm also the author of the Bible Fiber book. Check it out on Amazon. This week, we will delve into Ezekiel chapters 40, 41, and 42, which present Ezekiel's visionary depiction of a future temple complex. While our usual format for Bible Fiber is to explore 1 chapter each week, I've decided to dedicate this episode to an in-depth discussion of all 3 chapters together. As a priest, Ezekiel was likely enthralled by the measurements and architectural details of his temple vision. However, for many listeners, his verbal descriptions might be challenging to visualize. Thankfully, there are scholars who have carefully analyzed every measurement and created illustrated renditions of Ezekiel's square temple city. Although these illustrations are not easily adaptable to a podcast format, I'll at least strive to convey the significance of his temple vision. Ezekiel timestamps his vision to the 25th year of exile, specifically April 19th, 573 BCE. It has been 20 years since Ezekiel was first called to be a prophet during this period of exile. As you follow the evolving tone of Ezekiel's messages, you'll notice that he begins with warnings and calls for repentance, gradually shifting towards themes of impending judgment. After the destruction of Jerusalem, his prophecies take on a more hopeful tone, emphasizing restoration. When delivering negative prophecies, he directs them specifically at Israel's enemies, as demonstrated in the Gog Oracle. In these final 8 chapters, Ezekiel's focus is entirely future-oriented, often projecting far beyond his present time. While he describes the new temple, the reinstatement of sacrifices, and the reconfiguration of Israel's borders, he is not referencing the post-exilic community of the 6th century BCE in the days of Ezra and Nehemiah. Rather, he envisions a millennial kingdom that extends into the distant future. The vision of the coming temple was foreshadowed earlier at the conclusion of chapter 37, where Yahweh assures Ezekiel, "My dwelling place shall be over them, and I will be their God, and they shall be my people. Then the nations shall know that I, the Lord, sanctify Israel when my sanctuary is among them forever." At the beginning of the temple section, Ezekiel experiences another divine transportation to Jerusalem. He describes the moment stating, "He brought me in visions of God to the land of Israel and set me down upon a very high mountain, on which was a structure like a city to the south." This is not the first time a biblical figure has been taken to a mountain to receive instructions for a sanctuary. During Moses' 40 days on Mount Sinai, God provided him with the plans for the tabernacle. While the text does not specify the exact high point to which God brought Ezekiel, it is generally assumed to be Mount Zion. At this elevated location, Ezekiel is guided by a figure whose appearance shone like bronze with a linen cord and a measuring reed in his hand. Throughout the Bible, a figure wielding a measuring tool appears in 3 distinct visions. The prophet Zechariah describes a vision of a man with a measuring stick taking measurements of Jerusalem in chapter 2, and in Revelation, John of Patmos sees a figure with a golden measuring rod assessing the walls and gates of Jerusalem in chapter 21. In all 3 instances, these surveyors are identified as angelic beings. From his high vantage point, Ezekiel watches as the bronze figure meticulously surveys Jerusalem, envisioning a restored temple city. The angel begins by measuring the outer wall of the temple complex, which according to his precise calculations, stand at 10.5 feet tall and 10.5 feet thick. Notably, the wall's thickness corresponds with its height, something Ezekiel explains is designed to make a separation between the holy and the common. As the tour progresses, the guide carefully measures each outer gateway, documenting the dimensions and notable features. These 3 gates lead to an expansive outer courtyard, where the angel observes various chambers, paving, and courtyards. He measures every window, recess, vestibule, and the distances between gates, reporting all measurements in cubits. A cubit is an ancient unit based on the length of the forearm from the elbow to the tip of the middle finger, and it's typically estimated to be about 18 inches. As Ezekiel explores the inner courtyard, he observes designated areas where priests will prepare animal sacrifices. The portico features palm trees, echoing the design elements found in Solomon's temple. The text addresses the chambers for the priest and outlines their respective roles, emphasizing the structured organization of worship within the temple. In this section, the responsibilities of the priest and the layout of the sacrificial areas become central themes. Notably, there are 8 tables specifically set aside for slaughtering and preparing sacrifices, each equipped with its own instruments. Access to the inner courts is restricted to priests. While much of the text concentrates on measurements and architectural details, the angel explains the hierarchy among the priest in the new temple. He states, "The chamber that faces north is for the priests who have charge of the altar. These are the descendants of Zadok, who alone among the descendants of Levi may come near to the Lord to minister to him." I will delve into the significance of the Zadokites in chapter 44. As the visionary tour continues in chapter 41, the focus shifts to the temple itself. Each time Ezekiel and his guide approach the inner sanctuary, they ascend another set of stairs. The temple stands elevated at the highest point, and as they get closer to the Holy of Holies, the doorways narrow. The tour begins with the vestibule, an entrance area leading into the main part of the temple. Beyond the vestibule lies the main hall and inner sanctuary, which follow the same 3-part design as the tabernacle in the first temple. Here, the angelic guide takes measurements of aspects such as the width and height of the entrance. The inner sanctuary, located further in, is cubic, paralleling the dimensions of the Holy of Holies from the tabernacle in the first temple. While the angel does the measuring, Ezekiel respectfully waits outside. He was adhering to the prohibitions against entering the Holy of Holies, even in his vision. The last time he had seen inside the inner sanctuary was when he observed Yahweh's presence preparing to depart from the temple in chapter 10. Surrounding the temple structure are 3 levels of side chambers. These small rooms, detailed in their height and layout, serve various functions such as storing sacred utensils or providing quarters for the priest. The outer walls are exceptionally thick, perhaps symbolizing the temple's strong and unyielding foundation. This section of the text also describes surrounding structures, such as a separate building at the rear of the temple. The interior decor features wood-paneled walls adorned with intricate carvings of cherubim and palm trees. In chapter 42, the angelic guide directs Ezekiel to the outer court of the temple, where he observes various chambers designated for the priests as they conduct temple services. Ezekiel discovers that these chambers, arranged around the outer court, serve multiple purposes, including storage for offerings and other worship items. The divine guide explains how the priests utilize these spaces to receive and consume their share of the grain and meat offerings, as well as the areas designated for changing in and out of their priestly garments. The overall measurements of the entire temple complex are reported to be 500 cubits by 500 cubits. In Solomon's temple, only the inner sanctuary had a square shape. It is important to note that such a large complex would not physically fit on the earthly Mount Zion. So it seems Ezekiel is envisioning a temple far beyond the limitations of reality. The chapter concludes with remarks on the holiness of the temple and the significance of these areas in relation to the sanctuary, reinforcing the idea that the temple facilitates worship for all of Israel while maintaining its sacredness. In Ezekiel's vision of the future temple, the Ark of the Covenant is conspicuously absent. The Ark, containing the tablets of the law, represented God's presence among his people. Its omission suggests a shift in understanding the divine presence. Additionally, other key items of temple furniture, such as the table of showbread, which held the 12 loaves representing the 12 tribes of Israel, and the golden lampstand, which illuminated the holy place, are also missing. The specific altar for burning incense, another element of previous worship practices, is not mentioned in Ezekiel's account. These omissions may indicate a move towards a more direct relationship with God, encouraging the community to engage in worship without relying on physical representations. He may have excluded the furniture from his description because he recognized that the Babylonians had destroyed them 12 years earlier and that God did not require their presence in the future temple. This perspective aligns with that of the prophet Jeremiah, who stated that a day would come when the people would no longer remember or miss the ark. Although biblical scholars have attempted to create a blueprint for the future temple based on Ezekiel's descriptions, fully reconstructing his vision proves to be impossible. The primary challenge lies in the fact that his descriptions are largely two-dimensional. He details the lengths and widths of the structures, but omits any mention of their heights. He also does not address the roof of the temple. In contrast, the instructions given to Moses for building the tabernacle and to David for constructing the first temple did include specific details about construction materials. Ezekiel concentrates on measurements, but not on the materials. Moreover, we know that the temple described by Ezekiel has never been built, neither by Zerubbabel nor by King Herod. Because the temple in Ezekiel's vision remains unconstructed, some theologians argue that this prophecy may serve a symbolic purpose or function as a spiritual blueprint rather than a literal construction plan. Jewish and Christian traditions interpret Ezekiel's vision of the temple in distinct but overlapping ways, particularly regarding its prophetic significance and eschatological implications. In Jewish tradition, the temple described in Ezekiel 40 through 42 is often viewed as a symbol of the future Messianic age, a time of restoration and redemption when the Jewish people will return to their homeland and the divine presence will once again dwell among them in a rebuilt temple. The Ezekiel temple is a physical manifestation of God's promise and a focal point for worship and a symbol of covenant renewal for the Jewish nation. In Christian tradition, Ezekiel's temple is interpreted as a precursor to the millennial period described in Revelation, during which Christ will reign on earth for many years following his second coming. Many Christians believe that the specific details in Ezekiel highlight God's ultimate plan for restoration and the fulfillment of his promises to humanity. However you interpret the book of Revelation's description of the future temple, it definitely hints that there is more to Ezekiel's temple than merely a physical edifice. Both Jewish and Christian traditions recognize the temple as a prophetic blueprint pointing towards future fulfillment, whether in the context of the Messianic age for Judaism or the millennial kingdom for Christianity. More information on Revelation's connection to Ezekiel's vision will be discussed in the next episode. Thanks for listening, and please continue to participate in the Bible Reading Challenge. Next week, we'll begin with Ezekiel 43. For all the biblical references each week, see the show transcript on our blog or by signing up for our emails at thejerusalemconnection.us. Shabbat Shalom and Am Israel Chai.